Starting a new job is never easy. As part of the PTEN and Motor Age Best Young Tech Award program, I'm speaking to industry experts today to get their advice on how young techs can succeed on the job. You'll hear tips from success for that very first day onward, how you can get on the promotion fast track, and what common challenges you might encounter in the shop and how to overcome those. Plus, some advice on soft skills that you need in your shop. I'm Amanda Silliker, the editor of PTEN, and joining me today on the panel is Bogi Lateiner of All Girls Garage, Jay Goninen of WrenchWay, Mike Pressendo of the TechForce Foundation, and Anthony Williams of Carquest Technical Institute. Thank you all for joining me.
Great, thanks for having us.
So before we start, I just want to mention to everyone out there watching that you can enter a comment or a question for the panel on whatever social platform you're watching us on. They'll pop up here, I'll see them, and then we will ask them at the end of our session. Also, if you're a young tech under the age of 35 who is doing an exceptional job, or if you know a young tech who is, I definitely want to encourage you to nominate them for our Best Young Tech Award. That's brought to you by PTEN and Motor Age magazines, and nominations are officially open as of today. So you can get that application form at vehicleservicepros.com/2022 Best Young Tech. So I'm going to jump right in here. Let's start this conversation by really focusing on those young techs who are just graduating. What skills are shops looking for when they're hiring? And, Jay, I think with your experience, this would be a great question to start with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny because right now, every shop, it feels like, is needing a technician, right? So when they see a young technician that shows interest, I'll joke that it's, what they're really interested in is a warm body. But realistically, what they want is attitude and aptitude, right? Somebody that has that really good attitude, that shows up to work on time, listens to direction, and maybe has a base set of skills, but not necessarily fully trained, right? A lot of shops like to grow their own. They like to put them through their own training and really kind of set the tone for what their career is going to look like at that shop. So for me, the biggest piece is that attitude side. We can teach the aptitude, or as long as they have some form of mechanical ability, I think there's a lot that can go into that. Now, basic electrical diagnostics, every time I'm in an advisory committee meeting, it seems like every shop's asking for more electrical. Obviously, there's going to be more pressure on that as we move forward. But I think the biggest piece is that attitude and coming in ready to work and ready to learn, because that's a great foundational tool for what you're going to have in the rest of your career.
Yeah, I'd add to that. When I'm interviewing apprentices or entry-level technicians, I'm looking for how well they play with others, right? Yeah. I'm looking for honesty. If you don't know a heck of a lot, don't tell me that you do, right? I would rather know that you know nothing, but you're eager to learn and you're eager to get in there and get dirty and learn stuff as you go. As Jay said, I can teach you how to turn a wrench. I cannot teach you how to care. And so I'm looking for somebody who's passionate about getting into this industry and is willing to be honest, willing to work with others, and is teachable first and foremost.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And those are actually great traits that I think are forgotten when we're teaching inside the high schools and colleges, is that sometimes we focus so hard on the wrench turning ability, the ability to use tools, that we forget about, hey, let's find out whether they have an aptitude for this job. I think aptitude is one of the things that's overlooked quite often. And sometimes we need to remember that not everybody has the skill and ability to be a technician. Like, it's not only mental, there's a physical agility as well for it. So yeah, keeping those things in mind and being honest with yourself. There's a lot of jobs in the automotive career, not just technicians. So just know there's always a home for you somewhere.
Yes. Well, and on that, I remember talking to a shop who hired a young person who had their technical degree, but quite frankly, just didn't have the aptitude. But they had the attitude. This was a keeper, but after trying with this person for months, they clearly just, even though they had the certification and they had their degree, they just didn't have the knack for it. But they were passionate about it and they were great with customers, so they kept them and just found a better place for them.
Mike, you know what's funny is that was my story, right? I grew up in.
Well, I didn't want to out you. I didn't want to.
Yeah. It was actually me.
The whole time.
Actually me. Yeah. I grew up in a shop and always assumed that I would be able to do those things that I saw being done every day. And went off to tech school, came back, and wasn't good at it. Right? Like I really sucked, to be frank. So being able to find my right fit within the industry was really, really important. And I think it gives you a different level of respect for technicians and those young technicians that can come out and do it right away.
I do want to say, however, that not all shops are equally set up for training new people.
Yes.
They may want to, but they may not be good teachers. And so, yes, be honest with yourself. Is it that I don't know how to, which end of the screwdriver to hold? Is it my aptitude? Or is it the place that I'm at not giving me space to grow and giving me the tools to learn? And don't be afraid to go somewhere else. Like when you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. Is this a good fit for you? Is this a place where you can learn? Do you like the people who you're going to be working with? Do you feel like you communicate with them? So that's important too.
Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah. And sorry, I'll just to continue on that for a second, Bogi, is there ever like an opportunity to, I don't know, test it out for the day, or like maybe kind of have lunch with some of the current technicians at the shop? Like how else can, I know if I just graduated, if that's a good spot for me?
I think it's being willing to ask, right? Can I take a tour of the shop? Can I speak with some of your current technicians? I'd like to know who I'm going to be working with. Again, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. At my shop, personally, we always had a half day of working interview, and it was great for the tech to know if they were a fit. And it was great for me to see, do you just interview well? Or are you more interested in hanging out and talking? Are you just gonna stand there and hold a toolbox down? Or are you really curious and eager? Like the right tech or the right apprentice tech is gonna be in there looking at what's going on, asking questions, really excited to be out there. So it's a little bit of a two-way street, but if they don't offer that, ask for it. Can I come out for free? Can I come spend half a day or a couple of hours in the shop just checking it out, make sure it's the right place for me? I think most employers will appreciate that.
And I think it's important too. I've seen some folks might have a bad experience at a particular shop or even with a brand and just assume they're all that way. I met actually a woman we profiled on our Women Techs Rock stuff, and she was with a shop, brand unnamed, and was having a terrible time. They paid for her school, so she was kind of indebted to them and had a contract to work with them, and was ready to throw in the towel completely on the whole career path because she was having a bad experience, bad management and stuff, and kind of associating it with that master brand.
Yeah.
She went to another dealership, same brand, totally restored her faith in the career. She's totally passionate, engaged. So don't be afraid to move on, but also don't cast the whole sector or a particular brand. People are different from shop to shop, and it could be a great place. Go across the street, might be, go across town, same brand, they might be totally different.
And that's, to me, one of the biggest things or biggest pieces of advice I give to young techs is don't just go for the money, right? Like use those early years as educational and figure out where your fit is. Because if you can get in with somebody that is a good mentor to you and does have a good training program and you feel comfortable with them, I think feeling comfortable with that leadership team is so important, because that allows you to be able to ask questions and really be curious. If somebody's just banging on your head to try and get hours out, with a young tech, it's probably not going to end well for you. So don't take the highest dollar amount, figure out where your comfort zone is. And hopefully when you find that shop, it should give you more ability to have a successful career.
Yeah, excellent. That's great, you guys. I really appreciate those comments. Now let's just slowly kind of shift a little bit into, they just started their job, maybe they've been there for a week, or maybe they've been there for 3 months, or, just however long, they still feel pretty new. So what are some, tips there for how those newer techs can succeed on the job? Bogi, did you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, my number one thing I tell all new hires, whether they're an apprentice or a master tech, don't let your ego get in the way of your intelligence. Right? Be honest, be humble. You may have had the most incredible schooling. You may have done a whole ton of stuff in your home garage, but it's very different once you get into the shop, and people appreciate the honesty. I don't know this, but I'm really excited to learn it. Don't say you know something if you don't. The other thing I would say is stay curious. Want to understand how things come apart, want to understand how things work, always be asking questions, and show that eagerness to the people that you're working with. They are more likely to take you under their wing and want to mentor you and want to raise you up and teach you things if they feel like you are genuinely, interested and passionate about it. And then the third thing I would say is don't start like totally feeling like you have to spend all of the money on tools right off the bat.
100%.
Basic set of tools is like really all you kind of need to begin with. And then my rule has always been, especially when I was coming up, if I have to borrow it more than twice, I go buy it.
Okay, that's a good tip. Yeah.
Hey Bogi, you touched on a word that's always been big for when I was teaching in the high school, and it goes along with Matt Fanslow's comment about work ethic. There comes times, especially for the new guy in the shop, that you're waiting to do the next thing. There's not something directly ahead of you to do right now, and everybody's busy, everybody's shuffling, everybody's doing their thing, and you're stuck in this like waiting pattern. And one of the things in my classroom is I never allowed students to just sit and wait for me. I've got to be with other students. I've got to answer other questions. What do you do in that time and that moment where there's nothing for you to do? And I always tell them, grab a broom, and it goes back to your humble, like, okay, yeah, you went to school. Yeah, you got all this debt about, you getting your ASEs and going to this cool tech school. But there's a moment where you're waiting for something and you grab that broom and you help another technician by cleaning up that kitty litter for him. But when you do that, you're also creating a bond with your fellow colleagues inside the garage so that they're like, hey, you know what? I really like this guy. He was helpful. I didn't even ask him to do it, and he was able to help me out. They may be a lot more likely when you're down and they see that you've got nothing to do to say, hey, come here real quick, you can give me a hand. And there opens the door for you to come and learn and shadow while you're still on the job and you have those down moments. So
That's
my
how
always
you know
advice to new guys, yeah, go grab a broom.
Well, and I was at a table with a bunch of shop owners last week, and we were talking about that, and something that I think, particularly our younger viewers, to fight the urge to go here.
Yes.
They were all complaining about young people in their shop that when they were done with the project, instead of grabbing the broom or offering to help, they're on their phone. And every one of the shop owners was griping about it. It's a natural instinct. If you're 20 years old, you live on this thing. But recognize that you're there to work, and unless you're looking something up for the job, if you want to go far, I can't agree enough that humility and willing to help with whatever needs to be done. But got my job done, I'm gonna surf the web, and that's so good.
Preach it. Yes. Please avoid the temptation to start getting into like the YouTube world and the social media world where you're documenting everything that you do. Like, you're getting paid to get an education in the very early years of your job. You are getting paid to get an education. Like, how cool is that? It is not the time to be social mediaing and doing YouTubes of the work that you're doing. It's not okay.
I've always had those questions. There's a couple of TikTokers that I follow that they do some really cool stuff on TikTok. Couple like, quick transitioning break jobs and things that they come across. And it always gets in my head and go, who's paying for that time? Because there was no like shop mention, so I don't know what shop they work for. Their shirts weren't like overly branded, so it wasn't that they were doing it to promote their shop. That was purely promoting themselves, which isn't. I mean, that's got its own place as well. But it does make me think, like, when you're doing that, you're still slowing down a little bit because that's an additional couple of minutes of tracking yourself making those videos. So I would definitely push, especially for new techs. I'm not going to just say young techs because I've walked into a lot of shops where guys 30, 40, 50 years old are on their phone. It's, Mike, I'm going to push back on the 20-year-olds. Not all of them are on their phones. And I forget now, and it boggles my mind that I forgot who they gave a presentation about millennials and zennials and the new X generation, and they actually had slides up there talking about, like this generation's the laziest generation, or this generation doesn't care about anybody, this generation only looks for themselves, and people were having in the audience had to guess what generation was being talked about. And none of it was about the younger generations. There are newspaper clippings from 1950s, 1960s, 1970s.
Oh,
So yeah, I fight with following that same pattern that we get into, because our generation was talked about by the older generations, but so was theirs. And
right.
the phone is, oh man, that is the biggest distraction for everybody. And
Mhm.
it is a tool. I get frustrated when people are like, "Oh, I banned cell phones from my garage and my techs can't use cell phones at all." I'm like, "Wow, you took away an entire toolbox." Like, there's so much you could do with it. But in the classroom, it's the same way. You get teachers that are like, "There's no cell phones allowed in here," and I try to fight back with, if you ever think you know more than the information that's available on that cell phone, then you need to get out of your position. But on the same point, if you give a student a screwdriver and give them nothing to do with it, there's a very good chance that they're going to carve their initials into that desk. I know, because I was the person who carved my initials into the desk. If I don't know anything to do with it and I'm bored, I'm going to. But if you give somebody a tool and you show them how to use it, when to use it, then you empowered them to do something with that tool and not just surf Facebook, YouTube, those types
But
of
you know
things.
what? Because you're absolutely right. I mean, they're trying to figure out how to solve a problem, and I don't know it. I'm looking on YouTube and stuff. But I think maybe if you are doing that in the shop, make sure that your peers know that's what you're doing. Hey, I'm checking this out right now, because the assumption might be you're on TikTok or something, and that's probably not the place to go to learn things. But to your point, it's part of your toolbox. And if you're looking something up, just say, hey guys, I'm going to check this out real quick or whatever. But and I think it's so hard to fight the pattern. So I think it's both ways. Digital native folks who experience the world through their phone, recognizing that modulated in the workplace, employers recognizing that's how they roll. And as long as they're using it for productive and work kind of things, don't go the extreme and ban it, because you're probably going to lose the employee too, because they don't want to be working in some draconian place that doesn't let them have their phone.
Well, and if you're one of those young techs, put yourself in the seat of the shop manager, right? It's probably more uncertainty of not knowing what you're doing on the phone. And if you can have conversations with them of, hey, look, I look at this forum, or I go to this on my phone, have an explanation, have a talk. Now, if it's excessive, that is pretty clear, but be transparent with what you're doing on your phone, because if you take away maybe some of that uncertainty from the manager's standpoint, I think it drives a little bit better conversation and maybe builds a little bit of trust too.
Yeah.
You might be able to flip the script and literally ask their opinion, because most experienced techs have their go-to people to do that same stuff. And you say, hey, who should I go to, or who should I follow and stuff? And that way you're engaging them.
I want to go back to, we deal with in this industry very often that the older folks the seasoned folks, there's a sentiment of, well, I learned all of these tips and tricks the hard way, so I don't want to help you. And a lot of shops experience that, a lot of young technicians experience. So how do you change that perspective? How do you encourage the more seasoned folks to take you under their wing and want to teach you? And I will say that if you're going to the internet for your answers to questions instead of going to them, they're going to feel insulted, they're going to feel disrespected, and they're less inclined to help you. On that same note, I learned this one the hard way when I first started out at my job. We didn't have YouTube and Google and whatever, all that stuff back then, because I'm old. But if you are going to ask a very seasoned tech for advice on something, and then you don't follow it, they will be incredibly insulted and are very much less likely to give you advice in the future.
That plays into the humility. I remember, I think it was reading some of the applications for last year's Best Young Tech Award, and talking about that tension where I may have just come out of a training program where I actually do have some, I know this new technology and stuff, and the person who's been in the shop longer is telling me to do it a certain way. And it's that humility part, recognizing what Bogi's talking about of, yeah, you may actually know it better, don't diss them by not doing it their way, or, let them leave the room and then do it your way,
just don't ask them for the advice. If you know the thing, don't ask them and then not follow their advice. If you don't ask them and you go do your thing, then if you mess up, it's on you. right? And if you win, it's on you. But if you've asked somebody for advice, how do I do this? And they tell you, and then either you don't follow it or you go to the next person and ask them the same question, they're insulted, their egos are hurt, because there's a lot of ego in this industry. So their egos are hurt and they're less likely to want to help you. So
I think we need to start making it okay to ask our other techs. And I think it's so much easier to go and grab your phone and look online because you can get a fast answer and it's instant gratification. But let's start making it a regular thing that you can check in with technicians next to you. I know for me, I still turn wrenches and I work out of a single bay garage, so I don't have anybody else to turn to. But I reach out and I have my group of guys that most of them are the trained by tech guys. I'll call them up. Rich Falco has been helping me, trying to get my head wrapped around why I'm not getting a good scope capture. Uh, Bogi, you had a good one about asking and following what was given to you. I'd like to take it another step further and make sure you know what you are asking, not a generic, hey, I need help with brakes kind of question, because nobody has time to walk you through a brakes job. But if you go over them and be like, I don't understand, this caliper's not pressing in, I'm trying, I don't know what it is, this Honda is beating my backside. Another technician may go, hey, look at the book, you need to turn that piston, not squeeze that piston. That's a specific question with a specific answer, not, hey, I need help on brakes. That's too generic. And if I'm running against the clock, I can't stop and teach you brakes right then and there.
Anthony, I think that's a really good point. And I think a lot of times it's due to lack of confidence in a young person, right? So that person, even to ask a question, it's not the most natural thing for maybe a young tech to go over to that veteran tech who may or may not be the nicest person in the world. You'd never know, but or they haven't earned the respect of that technician yet. So they go over and they're kind of muttering the question and they're not really confident in what they're asking because they don't want to get yelled at or they don't want to seem stupid when they ask the question, right? So, I think for those mentors that are out there, those shops that are out there, make sure they're comfortable asking the question, make it easy for them to ask the question. And then for those young techs, just make sure you think it through before you ask the question. Don't just go and ask a question that's off the cuff. Like, actually think it through and show that you thought it through, because you're going to get more respect when you do go ask that question.
Absolutely.
As a senior tech, when I was in a shop as a senior tech, I want to see that you've tried it first.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't just pull the car in and say, how do I do this? Right? I want to see, like, well, what have you tried first? Those are always my first questions. What have you tried? What have you done? Because I want to know that you're invested in this and that you have actually legitimately come up against a wall where your experience isn't going to let you find the solution, and I need to lend mine to you now.
Yeah, so true, so true. Okay, that was great. I feel like I have a good understanding of, when you first start out of school, now when you're first starting. So now then the next one is promotions. So I think this panel might have a few different opinions on this, but, I often hear starting out, being on the lube racks, maybe not the most glamorous, and a lot of people want to do diagnostics. So just what are your thoughts on, getting on that promotion track and how they can really sort of, move up the ladder, so to speak, in the shop? So Anthony, I had you kind of as the one who might start us for this one. So what are your thoughts?
I think this also goes back to some of our first conversations. When you're looking for a shop, look for a shop that has a pathway. Right now, inside the training field, we have a lot of customers that come and go. They want to buy our training packages, but if they don't have a set training program in place to implement that, to have a structure so that the technicians know what to do and where it leads, then it's like offering a library but not ever teaching anybody how to read. You can have all the information, and we do have we live in an age right now that anything you need to do you can find on the internet. I mean, you don't have to pay for subscriptions for anything. You can find the information if you're willing to dig down and put in the work to find it. But when you're looking for a shop, if you have a shop that already lays it out for you and says, hey, here's the structure, here's an estimate of how long it takes in each of these pathways in each of these spots, and here's how you promote, that's number one, first and foremost, for every new technician out there. Find shops that are willing to train. If you go to just a shop that's hiring, it's run down, it's dirty, it's grungy, and it looks like it's out of 1979. Sorry if that offends some of you guys that are working in 1979. Too young, thank God. But if it reminds you of that 1979's garage, maybe take a step back and look at it and go, hey, are they being prosperous? Are they growing as a shop? Are they on the cutting edge of the industry? Or am I attaching myself to something that's already getting outdated and being pushed out?
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
I would go back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bogi.
No. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, I would go back to something that Bogi had mentioned earlier, in that when you're going through the interview process with the shop, it's as much you interviewing the shop as the shop interviewing you. Mm-hmm. You can set really good groundwork for yourself if you're asking those questions in the interview stage up front. What is your career pathing look like? What is it? What's your training? Do you pay for training, right? Like, do you pay for my time when I go to training? Asking those questions up front are great. And then being able to kind of get an idea as to how they're going to check in, right? Are you checking in once a year? Are you checking in quarterly? Do we have weekly meetings where we're talking about my career progression and where I want to go? One thing that I tell a lot of shops or advise a lot of shops in terms of communication with a technician is painting a vision for that especially that young technician that has aspirations past where they're at. Make sure that they know that, hey, maybe the shop looks this way today, but that's not the plan down the road. We're going to have additional positions. And with the evolution of the automotive business in general, there's probably going to be some different opportunities coming down the road. So being able to kind of paint that vision for that young tech. But if you're in that young tech seat, set the foundation at the interview. Ask those questions. Be prepared when you go into that interview to ask about training and career pathing, because it's really vital to your career. And, it's funny how all of this kind of circles together or circles back where, we were talking about when you ask those questions, it helps set everything else up, and it helps make you a better technician. And if they don't have that, but they're offering $2 an hour more, you might want to go to look at that shop that's paying $2 an hour less, because they're going to put you through a good path. They're going to put you on the right track to be the most successful in your career.
That's probably one of the most common things I hear about people who actually leave the field is, and this would be interesting to get the gang's feedback on, like, how long is it reasonable for? So we know Gen Z wants to get it quick. They don't want to be working on loo wrap, sweeping floors for a year or two. And then I hear veteran folks saying, you got to pay your dues. It's almost like got to be hazed, and there's somewhere in the middle. But I've heard that I've more frequently heard, and some the ones, hopefully they found another shop that does empower them and puts them on that path. But I've heard it quite a few times. I paid for that education. I didn't pay to be on the rack for 2 years, whatever it is, but I don't know what's a normal, but I think it's a real point well taken that at least have that conversation. Because if they're going to tell you here, you got to do that for 2 years, maybe you don't want to do that. Or here you got to do it 6 months. Maybe that's more appealing. I don't know.
Well, I think the time frame depends on you as a young tech, right? Yes, nobody gets into this industry to be a lube tech. I get it. Right. We want to advance. We want to be a master tech. We want to be an electrical diagnostic whiz. Like, I totally get that. And I'm not going to say that any tech deserves to be hazed in Mike's words, because we don't. However, there is a certain amount of paying your dues. You're the newbie. You're a low person on the totem pole. And I need, as a boss, I need to see that you're willing to put your all into whatever you're doing. So if you're emptying garbages and sweeping floors and filling the technicians' coolant jugs and brake clean jugs, or whatever the case may be, if you're jumping in and want to be helpful, be the best at that you can possibly be. And when I see that as a boss, I'm going to want to promote you. If you're a lube tech, be the best lube tech. Show that you can run circles around the other kids. Show that you're a natural leader and you're helping the other kids as you learn more, right? Show yourself to be worthy of a promotion. And then when you feel like you truly are, when you feel like you've earned it, like you have shown yourself in the best way possible, don't be afraid to ask for it. Right? A lot of shops, no matter how big or small, they see that you're excelling in that thing that you're doing. They want to keep you in that thing, because why lose somebody who's doing a really great job there? So it is a-okay to say, hey, I think that I've earned this. I've proven myself. I want to talk to you about promotions and when I might be able to move into more diagnostic and more like, or let's not skip general repair, right? Because if you're going from lube tech, you're not going to go straight to diagnostics. You're going to go lube tech, general repair, and then diagnostics. And that's part of learning. Take advantage of that lube tech position. You're getting to inspect the vehicle. You're looking at everything on that car. And if as a boss, I see that not only are you doing a great job at oil changes, but you're coming back with a thorough inspection and you're seeing things, that tells me everything I need to know. If you're just putting it through with the rubber stamp, I don't want to put you on general repair, because you're gonna miss things. You're gonna miss important things. So
I love that.
Be the best.
I love that. And encouraging patience in young techs as well, right? Like it does take time to earn your stripes and the respect of others a little bit, but you can learn on a lube rack. I think a lot of times we underestimate how much you can learn on a lube rack. And if you have patience and truly are trying to perform really well at that task and what you're doing, you're doing yourself a favor for the long run. But that's something I see as maybe a common issue with younger techs, is they're just not patient, right? They want to go to the next thing really fast, and it's the next job, it's the next promotion, it's more money, all of this stuff. But if they can just slow down and say, hey, listen, you're 23 years old, chill out. You got a long time to go in your career. Like, just take it easy. You're fine.
Yeah. And it's really easy to fall back on, I hear this a lot, to fall back on like, oh, well, they just don't like young people, or they don't like me because of the color of my skin, or they don't like me because of my gender. And while I don't want to take away from the fact that those are legitimate things sometimes, right? There are shops that really do discriminate in various ways. However, know the difference between genuine bias and just, you're new, right? You're new. You're going to empty garbage cans. You're going to sweep the floor. Like, that's part of it. I started out that way. We all started. And I also know when I started out doing that, I hated it too. And I thought that they were treating me differently because I was a girl, until the next tech came in and had to do the same thing. And he was a guy. I'm like, oh, this is just the new person thing. This isn't me. Right. So
you guys,
put that in check.
Yeah.
A little bit.
You guys touch on some good aspects that I want to dig in a little bit further on a concept I think that's missing. And it's the idea that the more prestige, the more respect you get, it's at the next level. It's always at the next level. So you always want to promote. But in fact, something that I think is really missing in our industry, from the customer and from ourselves knowing inside, that person on the lube rack is very important. Like the idea of the technician, none of us go into a surgery and ask the doctor for like the cheapest. I want the cheapest, doctor. Do you have any coupons, doctor? Like, you're going to open up my heart. I get it. It's a lot of work, but can we talk about the price a little bit? But take that back to a second, and you get on the lube rack isn't always the regular customers. The lube rack may have your coupon clippers, the people that are just trying to get the cheapest oil change possible. But in that moment when they are getting their oil change, you may be the only set of eyes that have looked underneath that car. And that driver, that mother, that father, that grandmother, those children, those car seats in the back, that is your responsibility. When you are on that rack, you may be the only eyes that are underneath that car. You may be the one who catches that, hey, you've got a tie rod going out here. That tie rod goes, this wheel's going to flip in. And if you're doing 75 when it happens, you're going to crash with your kids in the car. That's a very important person inside the shop, because that person may see more customers' cars than all your other techs, because he goes through them quickly. And knowing inside that is what you're worth. Like, not even just from the customers. Know when you come into our field, when you come to be a technician, that you are coming to take care of people. You are keeping them safe, and you may be the only person that is going to be able to help them in that situation at that time. If you go into your job like that, the rest of it will come. Just go in there knowing that you're there to take care of people.
Amen.
100%. Yes. Love that.
Yeah, that's great. It's so true. Just hearing you say that, yeah, woo, reminded me of this young lady that I was speaking with last week, and she was very, very new in her career at this conference, and she was just so lovely. But there have been some challenges, right? And she described a few of them, and most of them were with difficult customers. And at the end of it, I thought she was going to just be kind of like, oh man, so I'm having a really hard time, but she didn't. She said, but you know what? Every day I just remember that I'm doing a really important job, and I'm keeping my customers safe on the road. I'm keeping them safe, just like you said, safe with their families, safe going to work, safe getting their kids to school. And I mean, she couldn't have been more than 23. And I was like, that's amazing. She's dealing with all this other crap, but she's always keeping this in her mind. And that is what's driving her and pushing her. And she loves it. She loves the industry, and it keeps her going. So
that's perspective. That's really, really, I mean, it's so awesome to hear somebody even talk about that and really have that perspective, because a lot of times I think when we look at message boards and we look at different things, we don't hear that message. Right. And I really pumped to hear that, just because it's maybe a different narrative than we're used to hearing.
Right, exactly.
It's number one. I couldn't say it any better than Anthony. It is absolutely the most crucial thing. We exist to serve our customers and keep them safe, and to treat every car like it is your great grandmother who you love to pieces. Would you want her driving in this car? Do you personally want to be driving next to this car? This is people's lives in our hands. And if you don't take that seriously, I fired somebody once because he had a comeback that was a brake line that had been rubbed through, and it came this close to not having brakes and causing a major accident. And when I showed it to him, he looked and said, "Oh, that sucks," and walked away. And I'm like, this didn't totally eat you up inside? If I had done that, I would be horrified at myself. That's somebody's life. And he was nonchalant about it. But you can't be nonchalant about this. No. This is people's lives.
Right. Yep, exactly. Okay, so before we move on, I do want to just read this one comment here from Mike's Automotive Diagnostics. So he says, I have something to say about getting promoted. During your downtime, ask permission to shadow a tech. I know that when I was a supervisor, I would promote those who have shown initiative. I think that's a good piece of advice.
That's a great comment.
Absolutely. It goes in line with what Anthony said. I don't necessarily think it's always grabbing a broom, but there is no such thing as downtime. There is no such thing. I want to see that you're jumping up and ready to help with whatever, and you're asking questions. And it's that stay curious thing. If you have nothing else to do, do not just hold your toolbox down. Go over to the tech that you admire and respect and say, what are you working on? Can I watch you? Are you okay with me just hanging out and watching you? There's no such thing as downtime.
Absolutely.
I would push back on just shadowing. I would push back a little bit on just shadowing, because shadowing can be just as much of a waste of time if you don't go into it with a purpose. One of the things that I want to start pushing out this year is have a checklist. You know what needs to be done on brakes. There's a checklist that you can follow. Grab that checklist and being able to watch and monitor another technician complete that job, while being able to mark off like, okay, yep, he did do all of these things, and be able to go, hey, I didn't see you do whatever. Hey, I noticed that you took your air ratchet or your electric ratchet and you ran these down, but I didn't see you torque them. Maybe then the technician can go, oh, hey, this is a new tool that I just spent my life savings on from Snap-on. That's an electric wrench and a torque wrench in it, and show them, hey, you just learned there's a cool new tool. That technician said, hey, man, you were watching close enough to potentially see that I missed something. Or if they do miss something, like, hey, I noticed you lubed the back of those brakes. I was looking at your computer, you have MotoLogic up, and it says that this one doesn't use lube. Is there a reason why you lubed it? And maybe they share with you, hey, the box said to lube it, MotoLogic said not to lube it. I made a choice on one or the other. Or, hey, dang it, I shouldn't have lubed that one. Man, I got in too much of a hurry. Let me pull it off. Let me clean it back up. Let me do it right. Now you have the new guy that just caught a mistake in a veteran, and that veteran's going to go, dang, he's watching closely. That can backfire because, as Bogi said earlier, there's a lot of ego in the field. So make sure that you have that. Go ahead, Bogi.
Just be real careful with how you do that. Frame it as a question. Hey, I'm curious. Is there, and in school they taught me, or I see some techs do this and some techs do that. Is there a reason why you like to do it this way, right? Absolutely. If you come in with, why didn't you torque that? You're going to make an enemy, and they are never helping you with anything.
Yes.
Who is this young punk telling me how to do my job? So the reason why I say just shadow initially is because you're building relationship with that technician. You don't want to irritate them. You don't want to be there to keep them from making their money and their paycheck. So ask them if you can shadow. As you build that relationship, then it becomes asking questions. But remember, you're asking questions of a veteran. Be careful how you phrase them. They likely know more than you. And so just be careful. If you frame things as a question, you'll never go wrong. But be humble. Even if you think you know the right answer, be humble when you ask it. Hey, I'm curious, why you? Some people do this, some people do that.
Well, and
I think
and I think mentorship is such a key thing, but oftentimes in a shop, there's not like, hey, you have this mentor, right? I don't think shops do a great job at that yet, where they're assigning mentors, or if they do, they're assigning maybe the wrong mentor to somebody. But look at it from if you're a young tech, you're trying to you're trying to develop a mentor, right? Like you're trying to really, it might not be in words that like, hey, Frank's your mentor, but if you really respect Frank and you really like what he does, be curious, as Bogi was saying, and ask those questions. And you're almost developing your own mentor. Don't leave it up to somebody else. Really kind of take the reins on that. And by being curious and asking good questions and being respectful, you can almost grow your own mentor.
Yeah. And it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Like earn your keep, so to speak. If you have someone who's willing to share their knowledge and willing to take their time and stop making money for 10, 15, 20 minutes so that they can help them make that time back up. When they have axle grease everywhere on a car, volunteer to clean it up for them. Take those belly pans and clean them up for them. They're going to take time out of their day to help you. Take time out of your day so that there is that symbiotic relationship, that give and take. Make yourself valuable to them.
Yes.
And they will take care of you.
That is awesome, Bogi. I think that's one of the hard things to always remember is time is money, especially in the shop. Right. Jay, I would say one more thing when choosing or looking at a mentor. You don't have to go get the highest, most seasoned vet in the shop.
Yes.
Go next level up. So if you're a brand new tech, go find a C-Tech, and they're going to be a lot closer to you developmentally, and they're going to remember what it was like to be in your shoes more recently, as opposed to the guy who's been there 35, 45 years. They may have a lot of knowledge, but sometimes they've forgotten how they got there. So, choose somebody a little bit closer.
That's great advice. And the one thing I would add there is make sure that person you choose is respected in the shop and that they have a good attitude, right? I've seen more than one young tech get under maybe a pretty negative tech, and that negative tech has a pretty bad influence on that young person. And so when you're looking at who to follow, make sure they're respected, make sure that they have the qualities that you're looking for. And because if you get under somebody that's not, as pessimistic and everything's negative, guess what? You're going to become pretty negative. So make sure who you're following is the person you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to move on to talk about some of the challenges. I think we've established that the ego of the other techs might be a challenge. So we've got that one. But what are some other possible challenges that these new young techs might face, when they're first starting out? And most importantly for this discussion today is what are some tips for overcoming those? So Mike, I'd love to start with you on this one.
A couple things come to mind, and it's funny, we do great segues, time is money. So speed, you're new, you don't necessarily have the experience, but the shop, they need to move vehicles through the bays and stuff. So that pressure for speed, particularly on that first job where you may not have that experience. And so I'm sure my esteemed colleagues here can add more to this, but skill up, practice, get the advanced certifications, take the initiative to go learn these things, ask about tips for speed. That guy I mentioned earlier who didn't make it in the bays, I'm sure that was part of the deal. He just wasn't technically talented, so he couldn't go fast. So I think, but then balancing that with the very important thing we were talking about, that you are potentially saving somebody's life. You can't cut corners. So that balance between the speed and doing 100% spot on quality job, it comes with time and practice. They know you don't have that yet, but there are tips and tricks that folks have learned around the shop over the years that they can teach you that you're not get on an online course or in a classroom. So that's one of them. Another I've heard folks talk about is isolation. I think Bogi and I've talked about in the past too, maybe being the first woman a shop's hired, but it can also be just the first new green person. And I think it's really important that what Bogi was talking about earlier, some of that stuff that the newbie has to do is regardless of your race and gender and stuff, but still nonetheless, folks can feel isolated. There's nobody else my age here. There's, everybody else has been here 10, 15 years kind of stuff. So a couple of potential suggestions there, find a friend in the shop, befriend somebody that might be able to take you under their wing and stuff. Maybe not the official mentor, but maybe somebody that knows the ropes. Gen Z is digitally native. There's online communities. We created jointechforce.org for that reason. There's thousands of Gen Z techs and students in there that are sharing ideas and tips and things. And, somebody might, post something like, oh, this happened to me. Like, you know what, that actually happens everywhere. It's not just you, being targeted. But then also maybe, through those communities, learning about things that they can bring back to the shop. We've talked about this already, but just to reinforce, work is hard. You are going to have to pay your dues, but even when you're done paying your dues, it's still, you got to do the work. You can't just step in and be running the shop and be a master tech. It takes skill and experience and training. Another challenge, and this is by no means all over the place, but, if we're talking about a challenge that you might encounter, a negative shop environment, just like the example I gave earlier, same business, same brand, different leadership, and so to, stay positive though. Don't lower yourself to that level. But if you ultimately ascertain that this is just a negative environment and it's not me, find that place that you will be rewarded and praised and trained and all that kind of stuff.
Because it is out there. You just might need to, look a little bit, but don't give up. It's out there.
Yes.
And I mean, there's 5 jobs to every one tech out there right now. You can find a positive place if you look.
Right. And it sometimes is a fine line between what is normal, what's everywhere, and what is a negative work environment. And that's where connecting with your community, connecting with other apprentices, as a woman particularly, or any minority within the field, I would say definitely connecting with others as your litmus test. Like, hey, is this just me? Is this my shop? But also knowing where your personal boundary is of what is acceptable behavior for you and what's going to limit your ability to grow and to be in a safe environment. I will say one of the things that you can do to deal with Mike's original point about time, when you're interviewing shops, this kind of goes back to like set yourself up for success from the get-go. I would not, as a brand new tech, want to work at a shop that is putting me on flat rate right away.
Right.
That is not acceptable. A shop that wants you to put you on flat rate right away is setting you up to fail. It's going to encourage you to cut corners. It's going to take away from your ability to learn. I don't want you rushing right now. If it takes you 4 hours to do a brake job, I don't care, because I want you to do it right and I want you to get really comfortable with it. So if that's your number one red flag about a not positive work environment, if they want to put you on flat rate right away, run run away.
Hey, Bogi, for the viewers that might not know flat rate, maybe they're really early in their career. What is that about?
So flat rate basically is the concept that I get paid for the job, not for how long it takes me. So if a brake job pays 2 hours and I do it in an hour and a half, I just made an extra half an hour out of nowhere. If it takes me 3 hours, I lost an hour. So a really good tech, can be making 15, 16 hours in an 8-hour day, right? If they're really good, but they've earned that. They've learned the shortcuts. They recognize the problems. They hear a noise and they know what it is, or at least know where to go and confirm it really quickly. Versus when you're brand new, you're gonna be slower because this is all relatively new to you, and I want you to be slower. If you're beating flat rate time right off the gate, I'm really concerned.
Yes.
Yeah.
100. Yep. I agree. One thing I would add there, just when we look at young techs, maybe the biggest reason for failure that I see in a really young tech is when they lose confidence. And so losing confidence in this industry can just eat you alive. I was guilty of that, right? Like, as a young tech, when you lose that confidence, it's really hard to get it back because you're beating yourself up. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. And maybe you are looking at book time when maybe you shouldn't necessarily be looking at book time. And it really eats you alive. And so when I look at a young tech, one of the most important things to me is that they're growing confidence, and they can grow confidence by doing training. They can grow confidence by getting a mentor. They can grow confidence by just getting better at what they're doing every day. And if you can keep your head down and stay really hyper focused on what it is that you're doing and what your objectives are, you're going to grow that confidence. And it is so fun to see the light switch go on with a young tech when they finally hit, that level of confidence to where they feel good about going in and doing jobs. And it's a different job when they feel good about it, right? It's fun when you can do it really well. But if you don't grow that confidence, it's really hard to catch up. It's really hard to get that back. So if you're proactive and doing those things that can help build confidence every day, it's something that compounds every day. You're studying, you're learning. What I see in the best techs is they're not even just relying on the shops training. They're going out and they're reading forums at night. They're doing their research, and that's all stuff that can build a foundation of knowledge that helps you build that confidence. And I think that's so important for young people to really, really grasp that and understand that.
Can I jump off on that too? Because I think you made a really good point there, Jay. Like, mistakes are where we learn, right? This is where we learn the most. If I hear about a mistake, I may kind of remember it, but if I make the mistake, I am never doing that again. That is how I learn the best. And I think as a culture, we have a really hard time, not just in the automotive industry, but as a whole, with failure, with mistakes. And young techs, and I've seen it particularly amongst women, this like, I've messed up, I'm awful, I'm never going to succeed, I should just give up now. And there's that confidence knock, 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 right, coming down. So for the shop owners and the more experienced technicians that are out there, make sure you're creating an environment where mistakes are almost celebrated, and the learning that's implicit in them. And for the young techs out there, when you make a mistake, like, first of all, raise your hand that you've made a mistake. But if you come to me and said, I made a mistake, what I learned was, right? I have no problem paying for a mistake as long as there was learning involved. If you didn't take anything away from that, that's a problem, right? If you're just making mistakes and not learning anything, we have a problem. But if you're making mistakes and you're like, I just broke a bolt off and now I learned how to get a bolt out of a cylinder.
And it sucks.
Right? It totally sucks, but I learned, right? Yeah. And now I know how to use a drill, and I know how to do a tap and die or a time cert or whatever it is that you learn, a thread cert. Learn from it, but don't beat yourself up. Like, you're gonna make mistakes. I have 22 years of experience as a technician. I still make mistakes. And when I'm working with newbies, they ask me all the time, like, how did you get so good at fixing all of our mistakes that we make all the time? I'm like, because I've made them all. Like, I made all of those mistakes and I had to learn how to fix them. So get excited about them. And folks that are in management positions or the elder technicians in the shop that are maybe watching this, like, don't beat them up for this. They're kids. They're new.
Yes.
And Bogi, Jay, you guys hit on a very good one, and I think all of us still make mistakes. There's two Falcos that come to mind. The first one's from the movie Replacements, when he talks about what is he afraid of, and he says, "I'm afraid of quicksand." When you do make a mistake and it hurts your confidence, it's real easy then to follow it with another mistake, and next thing you know, everything's spiraling. Your whole day's going down the drain. And that can be the scariest part for any technician when you start second guessing yourself. Again, turning wrenches for 2 decades now. Man, I don't qualify for young tech anymore. I still playing in the diagnostic field, and I'm like, okay, I know how these things work. I know how they're going. And right now I've got one that's kicking my butt and brings me to my next Falco. I reach out to Rich Falco and I said, hey, all right, I'm trying. I've got my Pico. I've got my stuff set up. I've got my code set criteria. I know what it's supposed to look like. I know what I'm supposed to see, but I'm not seeing it. And I jumped the gun and I replaced 2 sensors that were not the problem. I ate $150 worth of sensors, and I'm going, stop. Take a breath, walk away, regroup, and come back. Because if you continue on that spiral, it'll kill you. And be willing to reach out to somebody, your friend, your mentor, somebody in the shop, somebody you respect, and go, hey, I'm screwing up left and right. I can't seem to see the sky anymore. I don't know which way I'm turning anymore. And let somebody's fresh eyes take a look and give you a hand, give you an out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have about 3 minutes left here, and I just want to I really want to touch on this soft skills piece. So I'm wondering if any of you, want to kind of chime in on the soft skills that these techs need, because, I'm seeing more and more nowadays. They're coming out from the back, they're talking to the customers. So that maybe wasn't the case, 20 years ago. But what soft skills can these technicians really work on that might help them in their new jobs?
I mean, I feel like most of what we've talked about thus far is soft skills, realistically. Like, very little of what we have said is actually about turning wrenches or diagnosing vehicles. It is all soft skills. Surviving in any job environment, excelling in any career is soft skills. Knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to write a story, right? When you're writing, especially in dealership life, how you write it up determines how much money you're going to make. If you just say replaced engine, you're going to make this much money. But when you go through all of the things that you did, right? But it really comes back to, at the end of the day, remembering that point that Anthony made of, you have people's lives in your hands. If you don't like people, and I understand a lot of techs get into it because they can work just with cars and cars don't talk back. But you really actually do need to care about people and like them, because people drive cars, right? And you're going to interact with people, whether it's other techs or it's customers. It's remembering that their lives are in your hands and they don't know. I hear techs a lot complain about, like, these stupid customers, right? Of course they don't know. They're not technicians. If they knew, you wouldn't have a job. So be patient, be calm, understand that people don't know things. And when people don't know things, it's an opportunity for us to be their hero. It's an opportunity for us to educate them and help them understand this crazy spaceship that they drive around every day, right? The soft skills, it comes down to liking people, right? It really does. And wanting to communicate with them.
When I think on that good communication, you think about when a job's done, most of the customers don't know what you're talking about. But when you take the time to educate them, I can't tell you how many times the people in my family who don't know that stuff come back and like, well, they actually explained it to me and I got it. They didn't talk to me like I was stupid and should know this stuff. They took the time to say, well, this is how this works, and this, and this had to fix this because if we didn't, then this thing triggered, and just taking that time. I'm, beyond just the write up, but just having that conversation about and letting them know. I mean, I don't think it's an act. A lot of techs I talk to are driven by the fact that they're helping. they're solving people's problems, they're potentially saving lives, and that comes across authentically when you're explaining to your customer why you're doing this or why this should be done, and it's really appreciated.
It can't be an act. Like, people will see through it.
Right.
People will see if you're not authentic. So really, curiosity and enthusiasm for what you do and getting excited about the fact that you're taking care of people, that's all the soft skills that I need from somebody, right? It has to be authentic, though.
The one thing I would add there before we're finished is
Mhm.
so much of industry wants to change the perception of the industry. Technicians want more respect. Shops want more respect. And as our labor rates continue to increase, I think it's really imperative that we do that. But to me, what moves us into a different level of respect amongst the general public are the soft skills. And that's what's going to get you paid more. That's what's going to get you more respect. That's what's going to take you to a whole new level, because so many techs are so good, so talented at what they do, but aren't good at explaining what they're doing. So they can't explain it to general people, to the general population. And so those soft skills help you do that. They help you communicate. And I think that's what's going to start putting us in really creating that paradigm shift for the outside world to understand how talented you people are, is when you create, or when you really develop those soft skills. That's what moves us into a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. That was just a great conversation. I know I learned a lot. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with us. And I do want to take a few more moments here. Any of you, again, who are 35 or younger, or who are watching and who know someone who's 35 and younger and who's an automotive technician who's just, excelling, doing great work, exhibiting all these wonderful qualities we've talked about today, please nominate them for our Best Young Tech Award. So you can see the website there, just vehicleservicepros.com/2022 Best Young Tech. Nominations are open as of today, so please check that out. There's some really great prizes too that come with that, including a trip to Apex and some free tools, which is always nice to get started in the career. So check that out. And of course, this award and this panel today would not be possible without the help from our sponsors for the Best Young Tech Award. So we have Carter, Autolite, Fram, Carquest Technical Institute, and WorldPack Training Institute as marquee sponsors. And we also have Attn and TechForce Foundation as supporting sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. And thank you to the panelists and to all of you watching. I hope that you gained some valuable advice from this session and are motivated to keep growing and staying in this wonderful auto repair industry. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And
thank you.